I'll move us on then to our second speaker tonight, arguing that having multiple partners is immoral. Crimson Alpha, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
I'm sorry, did you say my speech was for is immoral?
Yeah.
I think my one got mislabeled. My one I submitted for is not immoral.
Then we have a problem because mine is also that it is not immoral. So we have 3 people speaking that it is not.
Bit of a mislabel there.
Right. So,
Could you write one?
No, it's Crimson, your speech, actually, reading it again, seems to do both. It argues both sides, kind of a bit in between.
Right. So do you want me to argue an in-between one?
Well, how about we have Shingen first, while Crimson scrambles to rephrase their argument so it's a bit more firmly on the having multiple partners is not immoral side.
Okay.
Sorry, is immoral side.
Okay.
So, Crimson, I want you to argue that having multiple partners is immoral.
It's going to be tricky. Okay.
Okay, cool. So, we're going to have a back-to-back then. Shingen, arguing that multiple partners is not immoral whenever you're ready.
Yeah, okay. So the notion of tonight's debate is having multiple partners immoral? The answer is a resounding no, and over the next couple of minutes I'm going to try to explain the simple reason behind it. For the sake of my argument, I would like to define as moral actions that don't cause unnecessary harm. Following the golden rule, one should treat others as one would like others to treat oneself. And by this line of thought, I'm going to judge polyamorous relationships. The nature of such relationships means that the parties involved are unable to commit themselves fully to each of their partners, which violates what some consider to be the core meaning of an intimate relationship, and thus they consider it to be immoral. The problem with this attitude is that nowhere in such situation anybody is necessarily automatically harmed, and thus there is no reason to consider it to be immoral from the very definition of the concept alone. If we simplify commitment to the time spent with another person, it is very easy to illustrate that polyamorous relationships may not be not immoral, but actually a positive thing for the parties involved. We all have different needs regarding time spent with other people. Some of us get tired of it relatively quickly and require some breathing space, and others like to be around people 24/7. If two opposite extremes of that meet and develop a relationship, it may be very hard for them to keep it going because eventually either one party will feel unsatisfied or the other will feel like they are being slaves of the relationship. Introducing more people there may dissolve the needs of the needy person among the rest and make everybody involved happy. There's probably no need to point it out, but that does not make it immoral. However, even when such relationship doesn't work out and eventually falls apart, leaving everyone involved emotionally hurt, it's hard to point fingers at any one of them, claiming that they did something wrong to each other. Because in reality, they kinda did it to themselves. They were all aware of what they're getting into and what are the risks. Doing that to yourself is not immoral. As a last point, I would like to note that regular monogamous relationships are not all that different from polyamorous ones. They also have their consequences and risks, and sometimes we may not be able to satisfy our partner's needs. Does that mean they are immoral too? We generally don't think so, do we? So why single out the polyamorous ones? That would be a double standard that I don't know any justification for. In conclusion, no, having multiple partners in a polyamorous relationship is not immoral because it does not cause unnecessary harm, and people join them consensually, knowing the consequences and risks of such relationships. Whether they are more or less successful compared to regular ones, and whether you personally would like to be in one or not, does not change that. Now, questions like the notion of this debate bother me a little bit. They remind me of the questions like, is being homosexual okay? They're the same type of judgmental questions regarding morality of something that is not just immoral, but it's amoral. It's irrelevant to the topic of morality. Even asking them undermines the goodness and value of people who simply want to spend some time together on their own terms. I wish there was no need to defend such things. And on that note, thanks for listening.
Thank you very much for your speech, Shingen. Are there any questions for Shingen? I'd quite like some questions for Shingen because it gives Crimson a minute or two more.
So I may ask a question to myself
All right,
and answer it. If anybody is curious, no, I have not ever been in any polyamorous relationship myself. Just think that it's just not something wrong.
Corn has a question.
Oh, sorry. Corn, whenever you're ready.
This is just something I've always been a bit curious about myself, but do you think the risk for abuse increases just in all its forms the more people that are added to it, or do you think it just depends on the people that are in it itself?
Well, I think that everything that is related to people depends on the people, but I think it may actually be less likely because when you have like the domestic like violence, etc., abuse, sort of is based on the fact that it goes behind closed doors, and when you have multiple partners, like multiple people, I guess hypothetically living under one roof, it's harder to abuse one of them without others knowing. Like usually it's one spouse doing something to the other, and there's only kids around. And if there's more people, more adult people around, I think it's actually less likely for something like that to happen. Or if that were to happen, it would need necessarily multiple people who are abusive at the same time, which again statistically is less likely.
Thank you very much.